and welcome to this week's episode of CU Faith Fridays. I know it's been a while since we've had a new guest with us, but this week we're talking with Madison Perry, who is a senior, I guess, now that summer is here. So Madison, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Great, awesome. Well, we'll just start off with the first question, which is always, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? We know you're a senior. What are some of the things that you're involved in? What are you studying at Caldwell? Just anything that we can get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a rising senior. I am studying biology, and I am pursuing minors in psychology and theology. I am a part of the women's bowling team on campus. Some of the activities I do, I'm part of the Catholic Relief Services, like as a student ambassador. I also am vice president of the Health Professions Club. I participate a lot in the campus ministry gatherings. I was an orientation leader last year, potentially might be an orientation leader via Zoom, depending on the circumstances. But yeah, I was an orientation leader. Yeah, those are some of the main things that I've done on campus. Yeah.
Great. So I think safe to say that you're very involved on campus.
I try to keep myself entertained.
That's good.
Keep myself busy.
And very busy on a day-to-day basis, I'm sure. So biology, how did you get into studying biology, and what do you hope to do with that after college?
So I've pretty much always enjoyed the sciences growing up. I was pretty set on at least studying something in the sciences. Every year in high school, it changed from veterinary to maybe like forensics. And then suddenly I got onto the topic of genetics, and I wanted to work possibly either, people with genetic disorders or working with DNA itself. Didn't know if I wanted to do a lab setting or a clinical setting. But as I've gotten throughout college, I've been pretty set on going into genetics. So my hope after college is to potentially go into a master's program for genetic counseling. And that's also why I went with a psychology minor, just because I'll be working and interacting with patients a lot. I won't necessarily be doing as much as a doctor or like a geneticist would, but in a way it's, I'm working, it's counseling in a sense. So I will be, working with patients a lot, making some, life situations, or I shouldn't say that. I should say like more like, questions that are, have a lot of pressure to them and, help them through the process.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy thing that people deal with when they find out news of genetic diseases, disorders, anything like that. And so I can imagine that that's a really important role in someone's life, is when the counselor can kind of walk through them with those things. So that's great. That's really great. So some of the other things that you kind of mentioned in your intro that I'd love to hear a little bit more about. First, let's talk about being a bowler at Caldwell. What's it like to be a student athlete on campus?
It's definitely a demanding schedule. Juggling a course load full of, different science classes, as well as, taking on, the time to work out, to practice. It's definitely been, I would say it's definitely been a positive experience. It has, not only helped me in terms of, keeping myself busy, but in a sense, it has helped me manage my time better, also focus on my health. So that has really helped me in terms of, keeping myself healthy and making sure that, I'm getting stuff done. Because I've noticed with myself that if I have, an outside motivator per se, it's not just myself motivating, it helps me become more organized. Because I feel like if I don't have any outside pressures, I feel like, oh, it's no big deal. And then all of a sudden I turn around and I have like 3 exams in the next couple of days. Or like, I missed a homework assignment. But yeah, it has definitely helped me, pretty much it's been a great help in terms of, figuring out my schedule and helping me become more productive.
Okay, that's great. Is there anything that you feel like about being an athlete that's hard for other people to understand? And if so, what would you want to say to people who might not understand what it's really like to be a college athlete?
Yeah. I feel like sometimes it can be underplayed in terms of how much of a time commitment it can be. Especially with bowling, a lot of people don't realize how much time I actually have to take out of my schedule in order to be the best I can be. A lot of my practices are at night, and we practice 3 times a week, which doesn't sound like a lot, and honestly, it isn't. But with the time restraints between my coach, when we can get to the bowling alley, it is a half-hour away. So a 2-hour practice, I'm gone for at least 3 hours because of the distance. And not only that, I also have to take time out of my schedule to practice on my own. We don't really have any set workouts. We are told we have to work out X amount of times a week. However, we do have to figure out some time during the week or even the weekend to figure out a time to set to ourselves and, work out. But yeah, I feel like some understand about how much of a time commitment, others do not. And even depending on the sport, some are either underplayed or overplayed. Of course, every athlete, dedicates their time to it, and they really want to try their hardest. So I know all the athletes at school really do put in the work, and a lot of it is unseen. But yeah, I think that would be probably the biggest thing is people don't realize, like some people, like I said before, some people do realize, others do not. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say that.
I think that's a good point that you made about with being an athlete. It's not about just like showing up to practices. It's about working and putting in the work to be your best.
Yeah.
And I think people can identify that when it comes to academics, right? You have to like put in the work to become the best in your class or the best at your major or whatever that might be. But you're working to do that in both academics and athletics. And so that the time there, as you talked
Yeah.
about, is really great. So
And talking to like some of my like classmates or my lab partners, there'd be times where we're trying to set up times to, meet up and do work. And then I tell them I have practice. And then sometimes they don't realize how much goes on outside of the classroom for me, that they're like, oh my God, like I didn't realize how much you have to put in for this. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it can be. I mean, I don't see it as a lot just because I'm used to it. But then when I explain it to others, they're like, how do you do it? And I'm like, I don't
yeah,
know. It kind of just happens.
yeah, and the fact that you have a major and 2 minors is also
Yeah.
that's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot. So let's switch gears a little bit and CU Faith Fridays is
Hmm.
talking a little bit about your faith. So I know you said you were involved in quite a few kind of campus ministry things. I also, from what I know about you, you grew up being involved in a church where you're from, and so can you talk a little bit about your faith? What does faith mean for you? How did you get into faith, and what does it look like today for you as a college student?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of my faith background, I'm pretty sure I started attending church. I think I was like in kindergarten. So my dad was raised Roman Catholic. However, I go to a Protestant church. And then I think he like got baptized again, like as a Protestant. But yeah, he grew up in that background. My mom also grew up Protestant. Um, and I guess I pretty much like fell in love with church the moment you know, I entered, just because I remember going to so many vacation Bible schools, and I just enjoyed it so much about learning about my faith today. And yeah, so I pretty much went through a Protestant church. I got baptized late because, didn't really join a church until I was about 5 or 6. So I got baptized at 13 before I was confirmed. Um, so I do remember my baptism, unlike most people, but yeah. I feel like my faith really strengthened going into confirmation. So in my church, we start confirmation and end confirmation in 8th grade. And I feel like between that and going to youth group a lot, I felt like I got very in touch with my faith. And yeah, so like it really strengthened, and, it got confirmed. And throughout high school did pretty well, and then college was a little bit of an adjustment because again I am attending a Catholic school, so things are a little different. But for me, going to the campus ministry gatherings was very similar to me going to youth group, where it helped me. You know, it was kind of my peace and quiet. It was kind of like a sort of meditation for me in a sense, to just hang out and just, you know, talk about where we are in terms of our faith and where we are in terms of you know, how we are doing physically, mentally, emotionally, and just, you know, getting a chance to take a breather and spend time with God. So that has really helped me. Where I am with my faith now, honestly, it's been kind of a roller coaster, just because, you know, everything going on with the pandemic. But you know, I've been looking to God a lot more lately. Um, yeah, I mean, it's, again, there's times where I just think of, like, you know, why is this happening? Like, you know, why, like, what could have we done to prevent this? And it's just, this is such a weird circumstance that, like, there's so many what ifs that, like, just thinking about it too much can be a little bit overwhelming. Um, but for me, I've been I've been listening to like, I go on Amazon Music and then, like, I look up like a Christian playlist, and there's a lot of calming songs on there. So I feel like that has helped me out. That even helped me towards finals, because that was very stressful, trying to figure out how to do exams online and meeting certain deadlines, and, you know, a whole bunch of new things that we're not used to. So that definitely has helped me out. And also another thing, I have a feeling this topic's going to come on later, but I figured it's a good time to talk about it. Is that so I've traveled to Belize twice, and the most recent time I went on was this year. I was a student leader for it, and something that has stuck with me, and I've been thinking about this a lot, especially within the past week, is the priest who was talking at that. We attend a mass at the end of our Belize trip. I believe his name was Father Matthew, and his message was just really powerful to me. And pretty much, to summarize what he was saying, is that, like, God wouldn't put us in a position that we couldn't take, in terms of, you know, mental health, in terms of physical health. So, you know, he's put Jesus through a lot, and if, you know, there isn't anything that Jesus hasn't done. So, like, in a way, it kind of reassures me that in the end things will be okay, that we can make it, you know, through this. So there's times whenever I think, like, you know, where I get a little overwhelmed, whether it's because of the pandemic, if it's just because of mental health personally, I just kind of think back to Father Matthew's message, and that's helped me a lot, you know, to understand what's been going on. But yeah. So I'd say that's where I am right now, and I feel like that my faith has a very strong presence in terms of who I am. You know, growing up, going to church, and you know, attending a lot of, you know, Christian-related activities. I feel like that it's a huge part of who I am, and yeah, it's helped me through a lot of tough times, even what's going on right now. So I just feel like that it's just a part of me, whether, you know, I don't want to say, like, whether I like it or not, but, like, it's just who I am. So I just feel like that it's like that subconscious part, like, you know, times I don't realize it's there. I just feel like it's always there. So
Yeah. It's ingrained in you, and it kind of sounds like there's always been a little bit of, like, a call towards faith in terms of who you are. I mean, as you said right from the beginning, when you started going to church and getting involved, you just, like, loved it, you know.
mhm.
And I do think that that was probably a moment where God probably planted a seed in your heart to always kind of be bent towards that. And yeah, it sounds like just a part of who you are. I still remember actually, I think it was the first time that I met you. You were a freshman, and we had a little, like, evening retreat for freshmen, and there were probably like 25 or so freshmen there. And they all happen to be international students. And so we're going around the room saying where people are from and their names and all that. And it was literally just like, all of these different countries, one after the other, which is an amazing thing of Caldwell, I think. But then it gets to you, and I think it was just like, hi, I'm Madison, and I'm from Hawthorne, New Jersey. And it was just the juxtaposition was so funny. But to me, it was, from that moment, I knew that, okay, here's a student who is really longing for community in that
Hmm.
sense. And so I was really, and I've been happy to see that over these years, you've really stayed involved and continued to be involved. Um, what ways do you think, looking at your faith in college, and I know you listed a lot of things that you're involved in and things like that, how do you feel like your faith has grown from when you were in high school to now where you stand in college?
Yeah. So, um, honestly, there's been quite a couple of events that have happened in college that has definitely give myself a greater understanding and definitely has helped me like root into my faith more. I would say like straight off the bat, I pretty much like I guess it was either the first or second week. I remember seeing the applications to go out for Belize, and just doing mission work in high school. I was like, this is something I want to do because not only do I love to travel, but I also like to help others. So I'd say definitely the Belize trip has helped me have a stronger connection. I feel more so the second time around than the first, because the first time I interacted a lot with the children, and I also helped out more. I helped out with that as well. But this past year, I feel like I was able to talk to. I feel like I was able to talk to a lot of the people that we met in the village, and understand, their backgrounds, their stories, and pretty much what makes them a community, and and hear about their faith and uh, the people in Belize, they're very religious, and just to hear how strongly, I guess, like how strong their connection is to their faith, um, was, very uplifting, because, that keeps them going, and that also keeps me going, and especially because they don't live this, it's a different situation there. So just to see that, they have like a lot of hope and a lot of positivity going forward, seeing a bright future, it makes me really happy. So I feel like that has definitely helped. Also my sophomore year, well, it was the end of my sophomore year at that point. I attended I'm going to probably say this wrong, but it's the Preaching in Action conference that Caldwell hosted. It's the Dominican Youth of America. Is that what it is? Movement. Okay.
Movement.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I attended that, and that was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I found out different ways that I can, meditate and pray, and it really opened my eyes. Sophomore year was very tough for me. I was taking a lot of courses, very heavy courses, being a bio major. I took organic chemistry, and everybody knows that, at least for a that's what makes or breaks a bio major is organic
Right,
chemistry.
exactly. I know that. I wasn't a bio major.
Yeah. So yeah, organic chemistry was definitely tough for me. There were other courses too, but of course that's the one that stands out since it was the hardest, and that was my pretty much make or break. I was getting down to like the last exam in terms of whether or not I was going to pass.
Mhm.
So having that conference right after finishing my sophomore year was something that I didn't know I needed. It really helped me just take a step back and reflect on my faith for a week, and it is definitely it's definitely something that I feel like I still carry today. And yeah, that one has definitely helped. And then just along with attending gatherings, even coming to mass a few times, I definitely in going to like the adoration, that has really helped in terms of keeping me grounded in a sense from the insanity of this world. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Have you found, or are there any places that you've experienced or situations in college where you feel like it's difficult to live your faith? Like, I don't know if you find that you're able to live your faith as a student athlete, or you've never thought about that before, or are you able to, I guess, what are some of the challenging ways when it comes to faith that you experience at college?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the times, for me at least, like I don't really think about it a lot, at least in terms of an athlete standpoint, more of a student. Um, it can get tough because a lot of things will come your way, a lot of inconveniences will happen. You know, coming into college, you're learning how to adult and starting to do your own things that you used to. I mean, at least I used to have my parents for. But it sometimes other things come, and then the faith part of it can sometimes be in the background, and it can get pushed a lot. So sometimes it's hard to keep that in focus. And I feel like that's also why I attend the gatherings and whatnot, just to help me, again, stay grounded and whatnot. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the times other things will come before my faith, and I won't even realize it until I'm like, wow, it's been a while. But yeah, I just feel like the world that we live in right now, it's always, and especially the area that we live in, everybody lives very fast paced. And I feel like a lot of things can get in the way until something totally comes out of it comes out of nowhere. But yeah, I'd say that would probably be the challenge, is just life moves very quickly, and so does a lot of other things.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And it sounds like for you, you've been able to kind of take your faith and use it as a way of slowing down a little bit or savoring some of the moments, but also finding that peace that you might need. Like you were saying, during this pandemic, sometimes you'll jump on and find like a calming, faith-based song to listen to, which can be really, really helpful. But also remembering a homily or a sermon that you heard back in January that is, helping to get you through as well. So that's great to see the different ways that faith can be utilized. Uh, let's see. You mentioned that you're involved in CRS Student Ambassadors. For those who might not know, can you talk a little bit about what that is and what you've done through being involved in that?
Yeah, sure. So CRS is short for Catholic Relief Services, and me, as well as three other girls that attend Colo University, are student ambassadors. And pretty much what we do is there's four main focuses of that are a part of Catholic Relief Services, which is climate change, human trafficking, global hunger, and immigration. And pretty much what we've been trying to do the past 2 semesters is we kind of have like a mini project, and then we kind of have a larger project, which will usually be like a week, and then the smaller one will be about a day. And we try to focus on all four of the topics uh, throughout the academic school year, and then we'll flip-flop which one's the minor versus which one will be the major project. So this past year, so this was my first year doing it, we did, we kind of did like a solidarity wall where we asked others to paint their hands and place them on a bed sheet, and it said Calder University stands with immigrants and refugees. I'm not sure if that's exactly what it said, but it was
Mhm.
pretty much that. And as well as we had some advocacy letters. So if anybody wanted to write anything to our Senate and our governor, they were able to fill those out. And then our major thing, which was kind of like an awareness week, is we did global hunger. So we did kind of a simulation with that, where uh, the dining hall was nice enough to close off an area for us. And pretty much we had students or professors or whoever came pick out of a bag. They would get a certain card or a certain roll, And based off of there, they would either be in the lower population, like the low income, the middle income, or the high income. And you could see very well that the high income was very small and the low income was very big. And then the middle income was, somewhere kind of more like sparse, like the high income. But yeah, so then we had that, and pretty much, this is what you got to eat. This is what, certain events will affect your economic status. And then the spring semester, we did a fair trade sale for human trafficking. And pretty much we sold chocolate bars that were through fair trade, which means that all the money will go back to them. And we had that through Valentine's week. And then our big project was going to be climate change. So we hosted a movie night over Google, and we were going to have a climate change simulation, but that wasn't able to come into fruition. So maybe it'll come in the future. But yeah, so we just try to have events that either fundraise or advocate, or just give you, just what it's like to step in someone's shoes for a couple hours.
Awesome. That's a great description of those four topics. Have you felt kind of in your work with any of the four topics, have you discovered a particular passion in terms of your faith towards one or another?
For me personally, and just coming from a science background, I've been very favorable towards climate change.
Mm-hmm.
I've been very I'm trying to figure out a way to describe it, but pretty much like I've always been very, I don't want to say active, but like it's a huge part of who I am in a sense, because like I love nature. I enjoy going on hikes. I just, enjoy being in in the presence of nature. So for me, it's really important that we, take care of our home, because if we don't take care of it, it's just not going to end well. But to put it bluntly, but yeah, I mean, I'm very pro science. So for me to see the statistics and people saying like, oh, climate change isn't real, it's like you got to like look at the facts, and like science is changing every day. So things are, things may not be, oh, one moment science said this, but the next moment, but that's because science is always evolving, and that means that data will always be changing. So it's hard because like a lot of people don't, they're not very pro change, but with science, with new technology coming out, we're learning more and more about our world. So I feel like that's a big part of that's actually, well, that's one of the topics that I've pretty much clung on to, and I got to learn a lot about it, through Catholic Relief Services, through the Preaching in Action Conference, and just learning about the creation here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I thought of one last question.
Sure,
to ask
sure.
you. So I think, sometimes I've heard people say, or we hear people say that, oh, there's no relationship between faith and science, or they're at odds with one another. How would you respond to that, a statement like that?
Yeah, so I've even had a little trouble with that myself. Excuse me. Yeah, I've had a little trouble with that myself, especially even when I got into high school. In English class, I read a play called Inherit the Wind, and it was based off of the Scopes Monkey trial. And to give a little perspective of that, that was, I think, in like the late 1920s or 30s. Pretty much a science teacher was teaching evolution in a class, and he got arrested for teaching about evolution because apparently that's not the way God created the world. However, the textbook was approved by the Board of Ed, so it pretty much went through. But yeah, that started questioning my perception of faith in science in a sense. Just because, I was taught that, the world was created in 7 days and this is how it was. But I've come to realize after reading parts of the Bible, especially where it all says that in Genesis, that like it was more of like a period of time. It's not necessarily like 7 days. Like the Old Testament talks a lot in like figurative speech versus the New Testament. But yeah, I've come to that. I've come to those crossroads a few times, being like, where does it lie? Where doesn't it? But yeah, I mean, I feel like it's hard. It can be difficult sometimes to answer that question. But for them, if anybody does ask, for me, it just I'm trying to figure out a way to say it.
Yeah. It's a tough question.
Yeah, yeah, because like it it's not something that seems to be blended in, and other religions do talk about their stance on science, and there are some contradictions that come here and there depending on which faith. But yeah, I mean, I don't. You stumped me here for a sec.
Yeah, no. I was gonna add, like, I think often to the St. John's Bible that we had on campus for a
Yes.
year
Yeah.
in 2019, I guess
Mm-hmm.
that was. One thing I think I learned a lot from that Bible and like the images and stuff was a lot of them do incorporate aspects of science. And
Yeah.
I think when I was reading a little bit about that, they were talking about how, as Catholics or as Christians, like science helps us to understand the depth and breadth of God's creation.
Yeah.
And I think like one can say, sure, maybe it's at odds sometimes, but at the end of the day, like we know so much more about our universe, our everything because of science. I don't know if you were able to go to when Dr. Anton Kokomer came for Research Day in 2019. He works for NASA, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but he helped to work on some of the stuff for the St. John's Bible as well. And I remember him talking a lot about, he would show like a star cluster and he would talk about the, billions of light years from like this star to this star. And then he would talk about a psalm from the scriptures. And to me, it was just such a beautiful realization that the two do not have to be at odds. If we believe that God creates everything, then God creates the mind of scientists and, to learn more about what that means for us as humans, to
Yeah.
understand God a little bit more too.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. And like a lot of scientists, I mean, there's many that don't affiliate with a religion, but there are, there are many scientists who do have a faith. And to me, I do believe that with especially taking like theology classes and becoming a theology minor, it has helped me have a deeper understanding of the world and all the all the creations that are on this planet. So I definitely do feel like that that you may think that faith and science don't have a lot to do with each other, but they intertwine a lot. And I especially learned that when I took a Catholic social teaching at Caldwell, and especially like the care for God's creation and understanding the beauty behind everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's awesome. Sorry, I didn't mean to stump you.
No, it's okay. I just wasn't expecting it, and I
Wanted
was
to
just
hear
like,
your thoughts on that. Yeah.
like
Okay. Well,
I had like an answer, just didn't know how to.
yeah. Yep. To put it out there in
Yeah,
words.
yeah.
Totally get that. Totally get that. Well, I guess before we wrap up, is there any last words that you want to leave with our viewers?
Um, Not really. I hope you enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah.
I hope you got to learn something. Um,
That's great. That's
yeah.
great. And I think, I mean, I think I know that people can take away from this some of the things that you talked about in the beginning, feeling unsettled during a time like this, and what are some of the ways that our faith can remind us that God is there, that God is present, and to kind of rest in that calm. And so
Mhm.
so I think that there were some beautiful takeaways that you shared. So, well, excellent. Well, I just want to thank you, Madison, for being on with us this week and for sharing. It was really great to hear from you and to hear more about your life on campus and your faith as well.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
So yeah, you're welcome. And then so thank you everyone for tuning in to this week's episode of CU Faith Fridays. Hopefully we will be back next week. If not, it might be a little sparing this summer, but we'll definitely return more on a regular basis in August and September. So hope that you continue to enjoy your summer and stay healthy and well. Thank you.